My own daughter's husband blackmailed me for money and threatened to divorce her if I didn't keep paying him. Yeah, you heard that right. I stayed quiet for years while that man drained my savings, smiled at my dinner table, and whispered poison into my daughter's ear. And the worst part? He thought I was just an old woman who didn't know how to fight back. But honey, he had no idea who he was dealing with. Before I tell you what I did, how I exposed him, took back every single dollar, and saved my daughter from that manipulative snake, go ahead and subscribe to this channel. Because what you're about to hear, it's not just a story, it's a warning. And it might save someone else's grandmother one day. Now let me take you back to where it started. My name is Martha Collins. I'm 72 years old, widowed for 11 years, and I worked as a registered nurse for over 3 decades right here in Ohio. I've delivered babies, held hands in ICU rooms, and buried my husband with dignity. I am not weak. I am not confused. And I am definitely not stupid. But when it comes to your children, that's where even the strongest woman can bend. My daughter, Emily, married Jason 5 years ago. On the outside, he was charming. Oh, he knew how to perform. Firm handshake, yes ma'am. Open doors, talked about providing and family values. He was smooth. Real smooth. But behind closed doors? That man was lazy. Couldn't hold a job longer than 8 months. Always some excuse. My boss was toxic. The company downsized. They didn't appreciate my leadership. Leadership. Meanwhile, Emily was working double shifts at a dental clinic, trying to keep their mortgage paid. The first time Jason asked me for money, he made it sound temporary. Mrs. Collins, he said, leaning forward at my kitchen table like we were discussing a business deal. I just need a little help until I land something bigger. A little help turned into $3,000. Then $5,000. Then came the threat. One evening he showed up alone. No Emily. No smile. No charm. Just cold eyes. If you really care about your daughter, he said quietly, you'll keep helping me. Because if I can't maintain a certain lifestyle, I'm filing for divorce. And you know how she gets. She won't handle that well. My heart dropped straight into my stomach. Emily had anxiety. She struggled after her father passed. The idea of her marriage falling apart? That would destroy her. And Jason knew it. That man used my daughter as leverage. Every month after that, he found a reason. Investment opportunity. Business licensing fee. Emergency tax situation. And every time I hesitated, he'd lean back and say, it'd be a shame if Emily had to go through a messy divorce. You know how ugly those can get. He wasn't asking. He was blackmailing me. Now listen carefully, because this is important. I didn't hand over that money blindly. I kept records. Every check. Every transfer. Every text message. Every voicemail where his voice shifted from polite to threatening. I may be a grandmother, but I spent 30 years documenting medical charts. Documentation is survival. For 3 years I played quiet. I smiled at holidays. I hugged him at Thanksgiving. I watched him carve my turkey with the same hands that signed my checks. And all the while, I was building something. A file. A timeline. Proof. Because one day, and I knew this deep in my bones, he was going to push too far. And he did. The last time he came to my house, he didn't even sit down. He stood in my living room and said, I need $25,000. And I need it this week. Or I'm done. I'll file. And I'll make sure Emily knows it's because you refused to support her husband. That was his mistake. Because that was the moment something inside me stopped being afraid. I looked at him, really looked at him, and I didn't see power anymore. I saw desperation. And desperate men make sloppy mistakes. I nodded slowly and told him, all right, Jason, I'll get you the money. But what he didn't know, that week, I wasn't preparing a bank transfer. I was preparing a reckoning. And I'll tell you exactly how I started setting the trap that would bring him to his knees. I told my daughter's husband I would get him the $25,000. And he believed me. That's the funny thing about men like Jason. They mistake calm for weakness. They see a gray-haired woman standing quietly in her own living room and assume she's scared. Oh honey, I wasn't scared anymore. I was calculating. The morning after he demanded that money, I woke up before sunrise, made my coffee the way I always do, 1 spoon of sugar, splash of cream, and sat at my dining table with my file box. 3 years of records, bank transfers, canceled checks, screenshots of text messages, voicemails where his tone dropped from respectful son-in-law to calculated manipulator. One voicemail in particular still makes my stomach tighten. "You know what happens if I walk away from Emily," he said. "She won't recover. That'll be on you." That was the moment I realized something very important. This wasn't just financial pressure. It was coercion. And in the United States, coercion tied to financial threats? That can fall under extortion. Now I'm not a lawyer, but I am a woman who knows how to research. I spent that morning reading statutes, state laws, elder financial exploitation definitions. I wasn't looking for revenge yet. I was looking for protection. Because once I moved, I needed to move correctly. By noon, I had called an attorney. Not someone flashy. Not someone loud. A quiet, sharp woman named Linda Harper who specialized in financial abuse cases. When I sat across from her and laid out my folders, she didn't interrupt me once. She just listened. After 40 minutes, she leaned back and said, "Mrs. Collins, this isn't a misunderstanding. This is a pattern." A pattern. That word hit different. She explained that repeated financial demands tied to threats of harm, even emotional harm through divorce manipulation, could absolutely qualify as coercive control and financial exploitation, especially considering my age. I felt 2 emotions at once: relief and fury. Relief because I wasn't crazy. Fury because he thought I was. Linda's advice was simple. Do not confront him. Do not refuse him yet. Let him escalate in writing. We need one more clear demand tied to a direct threat. One more. That's when I understood something. The $25,000 wasn't the problem. It was the evidence opportunity. So I texted him. Calm. Polite. "Jason, I'm working on gathering the funds. Can you clarify why it has to be $25,000 exactly?" He responded in under 3 minutes. "Because that's what I need to keep things stable. If I don't get it, I'm filing. I'm not staying in a marriage where I'm unsupported." Unsupported? I screenshotted it immediately. Then I replied, "Are you saying you'll divorce Emily if I don't provide this?" He paused longer this time. 22 minutes. I remember because I stared at that screen without blinking. Then the message came through. "I'm saying you don't want to see what happens if I don't get that money." There it was. Not loud. Not dramatic. But crystal clear. Linda called it implied threat language. I called it the rope he just handed me. Now here's where it gets interesting. For 3 years, I never told Emily what he was doing. I convinced myself I was protecting her, that I was absorbing the damage so she didn't have to. But protecting someone by hiding the truth? That's just another form of silence. And I was done being silent. Still, I had to be strategic. If I confronted Emily too early, Jason would twist it. He'd paint me as controlling, as jealous, as unstable. So instead, I invited them both over for Sunday dinner. Potruast. Mashed potatoes. The works. Jason showed up confident. Relaxed. Like the $25,000 was already in his pocket. During dessert, he made a little joke. Emily's lucky to have a mom who believes in investing in her family. I smiled. "Oh, I believe in investing," I said sweetly. "But I also believe in audits." For a split second, his fork paused midair. Just a second. But I saw it. The first crack. That night after they left, I sent the final text Linda told me to send. "Jason, I will have the $25,000 ready Friday. I just need written confirmation that once this is paid, there will be no further financial requests tied to threats of divorce." No response. An hour passed. Then 2. Then at 11:47 p.m., my phone buzzed. "You're overthinking this. Just have the money." Not denial. Not reassurance. Deflection. Linda smiled when I showed her. "He's getting nervous," she said. "And nervous men? They make mistakes." What Jason didn't know was that by Friday, I wouldn't be walking into a bank. I'd be walking into a meeting with my attorney, a financial investigator, and copies of every demand he ever made. And I'll tell you what happened the moment he realized the money wasn't coming, and the police were. Friday morning came slow. Real slow. The kind of slow where the clock ticks louder than usual, and your coffee tastes stronger than it should. Jason thought he was coming to pick up $25,000. Instead, he was walking straight into the beginning of his downfall. I woke up at 6 a.m., got dressed in my navy blue suit. The one I wore when my husband and I finalized our estate planning years ago. Structured. Clean. Serious. Because this wasn't just a family disagreement anymore. This was documentation day. At 9:30 a.m., I was sitting in attorney Linda Harper's office with 3 copies of my file laid out neatly on the table. One for her. One for the financial investigator she brought in. And one for me. Linda had already contacted a local detective in advance, not to press charges yet, but to understand next steps if extortion could be proven. The investigator, a quiet former CPA named Mr. Reynolds, went through my bank statements line by line. 3 years, he murmured. Consistent withdrawals. Always within days of these messages. Pattern confirmed. At 11:58 a.m., my phone buzzed. Jason, on my way. Hope you're ready. I didn't respond. At exactly 12:17 p.m., he walked into Linda's office building. He thought we were meeting in the lobby cafe. That's what I told him. Instead, the receptionist directed him upstairs. When he stepped into that conference room and saw me sitting between 2 professionals with a stack of folders on the table, I watched the blood drain from his face. He tried to recover fast. Oh, he tried. What's this? He said with a tight smile. Some kind of intervention? Linda didn't smile back. Mr. Carter, she said evenly, please have a seat. He didn't sit right away. His eyes moved from the folders to me, back to the folders. I thought we were handling this privately, he muttered. We are, I replied calmly. For now. That for now landed exactly how I intended it to. Linda opened the first folder. Over the past 3 years, she began, you have received approximately $187,400 from Mrs. Collins. His head snapped toward me. That's not true. Mr. Reynolds slid the printed transfers across the table. Dates. Amounts. Check numbers. Electronic confirmations. Every single one tied to a message from him within 48 hours. His jaw tightened. That was family support, he said. She offered. I leaned forward for the first time. No, Jason, I said softly. You threatened. Linda slid printed screenshots across the table. Highlighted text. I'm filing if you don't help. You don't want to see what happens. She won't survive this. He stared at the papers longer this time. Silence filled the room. Heavy, uncomfortable, undeniable. This is being documented as potential coercive financial exploitation, Linda continued. Especially given Mrs. Collins' age. He scoffed. She's not incompetent. Exactly, Linda replied. Which makes your actions worse. That one hit him. For the first time since I met that man, I saw something real in his eyes. Fear. He shifted in his chair. Look, you're twisting this. I never forced anyone. Emily doesn't even know about this because there was nothing to know. Oh, that was the opening I needed. Emily doesn't know, I said calmly. Because I was protecting her. I let that sit there. Then I added, but she will. His composure cracked. You tell her and I'll file immediately, he snapped. I swear to God I will. There it was. Direct threat. In front of witnesses. Linda calmly pressed a button on the center of the table. A small red light blinked. Just so you're aware, she said evenly. This meeting is being recorded. Jason froze. Completely froze. The silence that followed was deafening. He looked at me, really looked at me, and for the first time, he understood something. I wasn't the quiet grandmother writing checks anymore. I was a documented case file. Linda folded her hands. You have 2 options, Mr. Carter. You can agree to a structured repayment plan immediately and sign a legally binding acknowledgement of coercion. Or we proceed formally. Formally, he whispered. Police report. Financial exploitation investigation. Protective order. and a full forensic audit. His breathing changed. Shorter. Faster. He thought he was collecting $25,000. Instead, he was staring at the possibility of charges. After a long, shaking exhale, he asked the question I'd been waiting 3 years to hear. What do you want? I didn't hesitate. I want every dollar back. His face hardened again. You'll ruin Emily. No, I said steadily. You did that when you started using her as leverage. He stood up abruptly, chair scraping loud against the floor. You're making a mistake, he hissed. Linda remained calm. Actually, Mr. Carter, you already made several. He stormed out of that office without signing anything. And here's the thing about men like Jason. When control slips away, they panic. And when they panic, they get reckless. By 4 p.m. that same day, Emily called me crying. Mom, Jason says you're trying to destroy our marriage. I closed my eyes for a moment. Because now, it was time for the hardest part of this entire story. I'll tell you what happened when I finally told my daughter the truth. And how Jason's lies started unraveling faster than he could fix them. When my daughter called me that afternoon, she was crying so hard I could barely understand her. Mom, Jason said you hired a lawyer. He said you're accusing him of something crazy. He said you're trying to break us apart. Her voice cracked on that last sentence. And that right there? That was the sound I had been trying to protect for 3 years. But protecting her by staying silent had only given him more power. I took a slow breath and said the one thing I should have said a long time ago. Emily, sweetheart, I need you to come over. Alone. There was hesitation. Not because she didn't trust me, but because he had already planted doubt. Still an hour later she walked into my house. No Jason. No performance. Just my daughter. Pale, anxious, confused. She sat on my couch like she used to when she was a teenager trying to confess something. Mom, she whispered. What is going on? I didn't ease into it. I didn't soften it. I didn't protect him anymore. For 3 years, I said calmly. Your husband has been demanding money from me and threatening to divorce you if I refused. Silence. Not disbelief. Not anger. Just silence so heavy it felt like the air left the room. That's not true, she said automatically. But her voice didn't sound confident. It sounded hopeful. I walked to my dining table and brought the file box over. Baby, I said gently. I never wanted you to carry this. But I can't carry it alone anymore. I opened the folder. One by one, I laid out the transfers. The checks. The highlighted texts. The screenshots of threats. I watched her eyes move across each page. I watched her breathing change. I watched denial slowly get replaced by something far more painful. Recognition. He told me you were helping us because you wanted to, she whispered. I was helping you, I said. Not him. Tears spilled down her face, but she didn't look at me. She kept looking at the evidence. And the divorce threats? She asked quietly. He made them every time I hesitated. She covered her mouth. Oh my God. Now here's something people don't talk about enough. When someone realizes they've been manipulated, they don't just feel anger. They feel humiliation. And that humiliation can make them defend the manipulator just to protect their own pride. I saw it flicker across her face. Maybe he was just stressed, she said weakly. Maybe he didn't mean it like that. I leaned forward and took her hands. Emily, look at me. She did. If a man threatens to leave you unless your mother pays him, that is not stress. That is control. Her composure shattered. She sobbed into my shoulder the way she hadn't since she was a child. I thought I wasn't enough, she cried. He always said we were struggling because I didn't push hard enough. That he needed support. There it was. The real damage. It was never about money. It was about power. Jason had been bleeding me financially while bleeding her emotionally. After she calmed down, I told her about the meeting. About the recording. About the repayment demand. Her face changed when she heard he threatened divorce again. This time in front of witnesses. He told me this morning he'd never leave, she whispered. He said I was overreacting. I nodded slowly. That's called gaslighting. She sat back against the couch like someone who had just realized the ground beneath her wasn't solid. Then she asked the question I knew was coming. What happens now? I didn't answer immediately, because this part wasn't mine to control anymore. That depends on you, I said softly. Right on cue, her phone buzzed. Jason. She looked at the screen like it might explode. Answer it, I said gently, but put it on speaker. Her hands trembled as she accepted the call. Emily, Jason's voice came through smooth and controlled. Are you with your mom right now? Yes, she said quietly. He exhaled sharply. She's manipulating you. She's trying to ruin us because she's lonely and bitter. That was his move. Divide and conquer. Emily looked at me. I stayed silent. This had to be her moment. She showed me the texts, Jason, she said. Her voice shook, but she didn't stop. The threats. The money. There was a pause on the line. Then his tone changed. You're seriously believing her over your own husband? Emily closed her eyes. You threatened to leave me if she didn't pay you. I was under pressure, he snapped. You have no idea what it's like trying to provide. You weren't providing, she said, and this time her voice was steady. She was. The silence that followed was loud. Then came the words that changed everything. If you walk out over this, he said coldly, don't expect me to come back. There it was. Not love. Not repair. Not apology. Just another threat. Emily's tears stopped. Completely. You already walked out, she said softly. And she hung up. The room felt different after that. Not lighter. Not yet. But clearer. She turned to me and whispered, I don't think I ever really saw him. I brushed her hair back like I used to when she was little. Sometimes, I said, people don't show you who they are until they think you're trapped. That night, she packed a bag and came back to my house. Jason didn't call again. And when a manipulator goes silent, it's not surrender. It's strategy. I'll tell you what he did next, and how he tried to flip the entire story to make himself the victim. The night Emily came home to me, I barely slept. Not because I was afraid, but because I knew Jason wasn't done. Men like him don't lose control quietly. They regroup. They rewrite the narrative. They look for sympathy. And by morning, he had already started. At 7:12 a.m., Emily's phone started buzzing. Text after text after text. Not apologies. Accusations. You embarrassed me. You let your mother manipulate you. Everyone thinks I'm some criminal now. You're ruining our reputation. Reputation. That word told me everything. He wasn't worried about his marriage. He was worried about how he looked. By 9 a.m., the calls started coming from extended family. His sister. His cousin. Even a mutual friend from church. All saying the same thing. Jason says you're falsely accusing him. He says your mom is unstable. He says she's trying to control your marriage. Ah, there it was. Smear campaign. Classic. When a manipulator loses private control, they seek public sympathy. Emily sat at my kitchen table reading messages with shaking hands. I don't understand, she whispered. How can he act like he's the victim? I reached across the table and squeezed her hand. Because that's the only role he knows how to play when he's exposed. Around noon my phone rang. Unknown number. I answered. It was Jason. He didn't greet me. Didn't pretend politeness. You've gone too far, he said flatly. No. Iraplia calmly. I finally went far enough. He exhaled sharply. You think you've won something? You've destroyed my marriage. You threatened to destroy it 3 years ago, I said. Repeatedly. Silence. Then he tried a new angle. Softer voice. Slower tone. Mrs. Collins, let's be reasonable. We can fix this quietly. No police. No lawyers. I'll forget the money. Forget the money. Like it was a misunderstanding. Like $187,400 just floated through the air. I almost laughed. You don't get to forget money you extorted, I said evenly. His tone snapped back. Extorted? Be careful with that word. Oh, I am, I replied. He lowered his voice. If this becomes public, Emily will suffer. You think she wants to explain to people that her husband is under investigation. There it was again. Using my daughter as leverage. But this time, it didn't land. because he didn't realize something had changed. Emily was sitting right across from me, listening. I put the phone on speaker without telling him. She already knows everything, I said. Silence. Long silence. Then his voice came back, tight and angry. You turned her against me. No, Emily said firmly. You did that when you lied. He sounded stunned. Actually stunned. You're choosing her over your husband? I'm choosing the truth, she replied. There was heavy breathing on the other end. Then came the pivot. Fine, he said coldly. If that's how you want it, I'm filing for divorce. And I'm telling everyone you fabricated this whole thing. Emily's shoulders straightened. Do it, she said quietly. And she ended the call. Now let me tell you something powerful about that moment. For 3 years, he used the word divorce like a weapon. That day, it stopped being a threat. It became freedom. But Jason wasn't finished. That afternoon, Linda called me. Mrs. Collins, she said carefully, he's contacted an attorney. They're claiming the funds were voluntary gifts. Gifts. That's the defense strategy. Reframe coercion as generosity. But, Linda continued, we have the recorded meeting. And the texts. And now we have him threatening divorce again after exposure. I felt calm. Steady. Because facts don't panic. Liars do. By evening, social media started buzzing. Jason posted a vague message. Sometimes people will destroy you and then play victim. Stay strong. The comments flooded in. Support. Sympathy. Praying for you, brother. Emily stared at it, hurt flashing across her face. He's making me look like the villain. I walked over, closed the laptop gently, and said something she needed to hear. People who matter will ask for evidence. People who don't matter will believe the loudest voice. She nodded slowly. That night, for the first time in years, she slept without checking her phone every 10 minutes. Because here's what manipulators never expect. Once their target stops being afraid, their power collapses. But Jason had one more move left. And it was ugly. I'll tell you how he tried to empty our accounts before we could lock everything down. And how his final mistake gave us exactly what we needed to take him down legally. If you've ever dealt with someone who lives off control, you'll know this truth. When words stop working, they go after resources. And Jason? He went straight for the money. 2 days after Emily moved in with me, I woke up at 6:43 a.m. to a notification from my bank. Unusual login attempt detected. My stomach didn't drop. It hardened. Because I already knew who it was. Jason had helped set up my online banking years ago when he claimed he was better with technology. Back then, I believed it was kindness. Now I saw it for what it was. Access. I called the bank immediately. There had been 3 failed login attempts overnight. And 1 successful password reset request that had been blocked because the verification code went to my phone. He tried to get in. At 7:12 a.m., Emily's phone buzzed. Jason. She stared at the screen, then answered. What did your mother change? He demanded immediately. Emily's face went pale. I don't know what you're talking about. Yes, you do, he snapped. The account access. I can't see anything. There it was. He wasn't calling about their marriage. He wasn't calling about reconciliation. He was calling because the money pipeline had closed. Emily looked at me. And for the first time since this began, I saw anger replace confusion. You tried to log into my mom's bank? She asked slowly. Silence. Then deflection. I was checking something. No, she said firmly. You were trying to move money. His breathing grew heavier. You have no idea the financial pressure I'm under, he said. If you just talked to her instead of turning this into a legal circus. She didn't turn it into anything, Emily interrupted. You did. And she hung up again. Now here's where Jason made the biggest mistake of all. He tried again. Not through me. Not directly through Emily. But through the joint account he shared with her. By noon, $18,000 had been transferred out of their shared savings into an account Emily didn't recognize. When she saw it, her hands started shaking. He's draining it, she whispered. That wasn't panic I felt. That was confirmation. Linda was on speaker within minutes. Freeze everything, she instructed. File immediate separation notice. and document the transfer. By 3 p.m., the bank flagged the transaction as suspicious due to the pending legal inquiry already attached to his name from our earlier consultation. The transfer was frozen mid-process. Frozen? You want to know what poetic justice looks like? It looks like a desperate man watching the money he tried to grab get locked in digital limbo. Jason showed up at the house at 5:30 p.m. Unannounced. Uninvited. Pounding on the door. "You can't do this," he shouted. "That's my money too." I opened the door, but only halfway. "You mean the money my daughter earned?" I asked calmly. His face was red. Furious. Not controlled anymore. "You think you're smarter than me?" he hissed. "No. Irrapliasufli. I just stopped underestimating you." He stepped closer. Too close. "Drop the investigation," he said through clenched teeth. "Or I swear I will bury both of you in legal fees." Threat. Again. And this time? My security camera was recording every second. I tilted my head slightly toward the camera above the porch light. "You might want to repeat that clearly," I said evenly. He followed my gaze. And for the first time in this entire saga, he realized he wasn't the one controlling the narrative anymore. He backed up slowly. "You're going to regret this," he muttered. "No," I said. "You are." He left, tires screeching out of my driveway. By that evening, Linda had everything she needed. Attempted unauthorized bank access. Documented threats. Attempted asset removal during separation. Recorded intimidation. Pattern. Escalation. Evidence. Emily sat beside me on the couch that night, staring at the quiet street outside. "I married a stranger," she whispered. I put my arm around her shoulders. "No," I said gently. "You married a mask. And here's something powerful about masks. When they crack, they don't go back on clean." The next morning, we filed formal legal action. And that's when Jason's world really started shaking. Because once it moved from family drama to official investigation, he wasn't just dealing with a grandmother anymore. He was dealing with the system. I'll tell you what happened when the forensic audit began, and how we uncovered something even bigger than we expected. When the forensic audit officially began, I thought we were just proving one thing: that Jason had coerced me out of nearly $200,000. I had no idea we were about to uncover something much bigger. Linda warned us the process would take weeks. Bank records, tax filings, business registrations, credit history, digital transfers. People who manipulate financially rarely do it in one place, she told us. If there's a pattern with you, there may be a pattern elsewhere. That sentence stayed with me, because Jason always talked big. Investments, business partnerships, private ventures. Yet somehow he never had stable income. 3 days into the audit, Mr. Reynolds called. "Mrs. Collins," he said carefully, "did you know Jason opened 2 LLCs in the last 4 years?" I blinked. No. Neither of them are active businesses. But both received deposits. Significant ones. My stomach tightened. From who? There was a pause. You. And potentially others. Others. That word hit like ice water. Turns out, some of the money I transferred wasn't just going into personal expenses. It was being routed through shell business accounts. Accounts that made it look like legitimate investment capital. He wasn't just taking money. He was laundering the appearance of it. When Emily heard that, she went quiet in a way that scared me. Not crying. Not shaking. Just still. "He told me those LLCs were for our future," she said slowly. "He said once they took off, we'd be financially independent." But they never took off. Because they were never meant to. They were vehicles. And the deeper the audit went, the uglier it got. Jason had taken a $40,000 business loan from one of Emily's coworkers 2 years ago. Promised high returns. Never paid it back. He borrowed $12,000 from a church acquaintance claiming he needed capital to secure a contract. He even asked his own cousin for $8,500 under the excuse of short-term liquidity issues. Same script. Same pressure. Same urgency. Different victims. This wasn't financial stress. This was a system. A practiced one. By the end of week 2, the numbers were staggering. Between me, Emily's joint savings, and these outside loans, Jason had manipulated over $310,000 in 4 years. And here's the part that made my hands shake for the first time. None of it was invested. Most of it had been spent. Luxury electronics, high-end watches, private gambling site deposits, travel bookings Emily never knew about. He wasn't building a future. He was funding a lifestyle. When confronted with preliminary findings through his attorney, Jason's defense shifted again. It was marital financial management. Marital. As if deception becomes legal just because you're wearing a wedding ring. But the attempted bank access? The recorded threats? The documented coercion tied to divorce pressure? That changed everything. Because now it wasn't just civil. It was potentially criminal. One afternoon, Emily received a call from Jason's sister. The same one who had messaged her defending him earlier. Her voice sounded different this time. Emily, he asked me for money too. Last year. I thought it was just temporary. Emily closed her eyes. How much? 15,000. And just like that, the sympathy campaign started cracking. Because lies survive in isolation. But patterns expose themselves. By the end of that week, 2 more people had quietly contacted Linda's office after hearing whispers about the investigation. They didn't want drama. They didn't want court. They just wanted answers. And suddenly Jason wasn't a misunderstood husband being attacked by his mother-in-law. He was a man with a paper trail. The pressure must have been suffocating him. Because he did something reckless next. He posted again. But this time it wasn't vague. It was direct. He accused me publicly of financial abuse. Said I was controlling. Said I used money to dominate my daughter's marriage. He had no idea that defamation during an active investigation is gasoline on a fire. Linda called me within the hour. He just made this easier, she said calmly. Because every accusation he posted contradicted documented transfers and threats. Every angry comment became discoverable evidence. Every lie created another crack. That night, Emily sat beside me on the porch. The air was cold, but neither of us moved. I feel stupid, she whispered. I shook my head firmly. You feel human. There's a difference. Manipulators don't look like villains at first. They look like ambition. They look like charm. They look like someone who just needs a little support. Until support becomes obligation. And obligation becomes control. The audit was nearly complete. And what it was building wasn't just a repayment demand anymore. It was a case. A real one. But Jason wasn't done making mistakes. I'll tell you about the night he tried to contact me privately, thinking he could still negotiate with intimidation. And how that conversation sealed his fate for good. By the time Jason reached out to me privately again, the walls were already closing in on him. The audit was nearly complete. Multiple lenders were cooperating. His online posts were being archived. And the attempted bank access had been formally documented. He knew he was in trouble. And when men like Jason realize the system is no longer bending in their favor, they try one last psychological play. It was 9:46 p.m. when my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer. But something in me knew. This was it. So I picked up. Silence at first. Then his voice. Lower than usual. Controlled. Mrs. Collins, we need to talk. I didn't respond emotionally. I didn't react. I'm listening, I said evenly. I don't want this to go further, he continued. This is getting out of hand. Out of hand. As if I had started the fire. You started this 3 years ago, I replied calmly. A sharp exhale came through the phone. You're blowing it out of proportion. I never forced you to do anything. I let him talk. That's something I learned during this entire ordeal. Manipulators reveal themselves when you let them fill silence. You chose to help us, he went on. You liked being needed. Now you're embarrassed, so you're rewriting history. Rewriting history. That's what he thought this was. But facts don't rewrite. They replay. Jason, I said slowly. Are you asking me to withdraw the investigation? There was a pause. Yes. And in return. Another pause. Longer this time. I'll agree to a clean divorce. No contest. Emily keeps the house. Ah. There it was. Not remorse. Not accountability. Negotiation. He still thought this was a deal to structure. You're offering my daughter stability in exchange for silence? I asked. You're making this dramatic, he snapped. I'm offering resolution. No. I corrected him gently. You're offering terms. His tone shifted again, frustration rising. If this goes criminal, he said sharply, it won't just hurt me. Emily's name gets dragged through court too. Reporters. Public record. Is that what you want for her? There it was. Threat number. I'd lost count. Still using her as leverage. But here's what he didn't know. The call was being recorded. Not secretly. Legally. With counsel's prior instruction and state compliance. Because once someone shows you their pattern, you don't ignore it. You document it. Are you threatening consequences if we continue cooperating with investigators? I asked calmly. I'm telling you there will be consequences, he replied. Crystal clear. I felt something settle inside me right then. Not anger. Not fear. Certainty. You made one mistake, Jason, I said quietly. Oh yeah. You assumed I was trying to win an argument. Silence. This isn't about pride. It's about protection. For who? He scoffed. For every person you've done this to. He didn't respond immediately. Because deep down, he knew. He knew the pattern was exposed. He knew the paper trail existed. He knew other people had started talking. You think you're some kind of hero? He muttered. No, I said. I think I'm a grandmother who finally stopped being afraid. His breathing changed again. That tight, frustrated rhythm I had heard in the lawyer's office weeks earlier. You're going to regret this, he said quietly. I didn't flinch this time. No. Irreplaceably. You are. And I hung up. The next morning, Linda listened to the recording. When it ended, she looked at me with something close to admiration. He just reinforced coercive intent during an active inquiry, she said. That was reckless. Reckless. That word had followed him for weeks now. Desperate men escalate. Disciplined women document. By that afternoon, his attorney reached out again. The tone had changed. No more denial. No more accusations of fabrication. Now it was, we would like to discuss structured restitution. Restitution. That was the first time the word, repayment, came from their side. And suddenly the man who once demanded $25,000 with confidence was negotiating payment plans under legal supervision. Emily sat across from me that evening, sunlight catching in her tired eyes. I don't recognize him anymore, she said softly. I nodded. That's because the mask is gone. But this wasn't finished yet. Because repayment is one thing. Accountability is another. I'll tell you how we forced him to sign an agreement that not only returned every dollar, but legally prevented him from ever coming near our finances again. By the time Jason's attorney requested a formal settlement meeting, the tone had completely changed. No more arrogance. No more public victim posts. No more late-night intimidation calls. Now it was all, we'd like to resolve this efficiently. Efficient. That's what people say when they realize they're losing. The meeting was scheduled for a Tuesday morning at 10 a.m. Neutral office. Legal representatives present. Everything documented. This time I didn't feel nervous. I felt prepared. Emily sat beside me, not as a frightened wife anymore, but as a woman who had seen the truth and decided she deserved better. When Jason walked into that room, he looked different. Not physically broken, but smaller. His confidence had shrunk into something tight and cautious. He didn't look at me right away. That told me everything. His attorney began with polished language. My client is willing to enter into a structured restitution agreement without admission of criminal liability. Without admission. Of course. Linda responded calmly. Restitution is non-negotiable. Non-disparagement is mandatory. Financial separation is permanent. And if a single payment is missed, the agreement triggers immediate legal escalation. Jason finally looked up at me. You really want to do this? He asked quietly. I held his gaze. You really thought I wouldn't? Silence fell over the room. The terms were laid out clearly. Full repayment of $187,400 to me. Immediate return of the frozen $18,000 from Emily's joint account. Documented acknowledgement of financial coercion conduct within the settlement language. A legally binding clause prohibiting him from contacting me for money ever again. A restraining provision barring him from accessing or attempting to access any financial accounts connected to our family. And the most powerful clause of all. If he violated any term, the recorded evidence and forensic audit findings would be released directly to authorities without further warning. No second chances. No quiet forgiveness. No grandmotherly mercy. He read every page. Every word. His jaw tightened when he reached the section referencing the recorded porch confrontation. You had cameras on me, he muttered. Yes, I said simply. He flipped another page. And the phone call? Documented, Linda replied. That was the moment he fully understood something he had refused to believe for years. I had kept records of everything. While he thought I was weak, I was building a file. He leaned back in his chair. For a brief second, I saw something flash across his face. Not anger. Not pride. Regret. But regret without accountability is just self-pity. You're destroying my reputation, he said quietly. I shook my head. No, Jason. Your actions did that. Emily spoke next. Calm. Steady. Stronger than I had ever heard her. You used divorce as a weapon, she said. Now you don't get to complain about consequences. That hit him harder than anything I could have said. Because for the first time, she wasn't afraid of him walking away. She was ready to. The final page of the agreement slid across the table. Sign, Linda said. He hesitated. Because that signature meant something irreversible. It meant he couldn't rewrite the story later. It meant he couldn't gaslight privately. It meant the money trail was officially acknowledged. And it meant I was no longer his silent safety net. He picked up the pen. His hand actually trembled. 3 years of threats. 3 years of manipulation. 3 years of thinking he controlled the board. Ended with one signature. When he finished, he didn't look at me again. He stood, adjusted his jacket, and said quietly, You'll never hear from me again. I met his eyes one last time. That's the point. He walked out of that room without another word. And just like that, the man who once demanded $25,000 with confidence left owing structured payments under legal supervision. Over the next several months, the repayments began. Automatically drafted. Court monitored. No excuses. Every deposit that hit my account felt different. Not because I needed the money, but because it represented something far more valuable. Boundaries. Emily filed for divorce 2 weeks later. This time he didn't threaten. He complied. Because he knew the evidence existed. But here's what made this victory truly powerful. It wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. It was controlled. Documented. Final. And yet, there was one last conversation I needed to have with him. Not in a courtroom. Not through a lawyer. But face to face. Because sometimes revenge isn't about punishment. It's about clarity. I'll tell you what I said to him the last time I ever saw him. And the lesson I made sure he would never forget again. The final time I saw Jason wasn't in a courtroom. It wasn't during a dramatic confrontation. And it wasn't loud. It was quiet. Controlled. Intentional. 3 months after he signed the restitution agreement, he came to pick up the last of his belongings from the house Emily had already legally secured in the divorce. By then, the repayment drafts had been coming out on schedule. No missed payments. No violations. Because fear of consequences will do what morality never could. Emily didn't want to see him alone. Not because she was afraid, but because closure sometimes needs a witness. So I stood in the hallway while he packed the final box of his things. No yelling. No accusations. No performance. He looked smaller than I remembered. Not physically but energetically. The confidence he once carried like armor had thinned into something cautious. When he finished sealing the box, he turned toward us. I hope you're happy, he said. There it was. Still trying to frame accountability as cruelty. Emily didn't respond. She didn't need to. Her piece was louder than any argument. But I stepped forward. Slowly. Calmly. Jason, I said. Put the box down for a moment. He hesitated. Then he did. I walked a little closer. Not aggressively, not emotionally. Just steady. You spent 3 years believing I was an easy target. I continued. You thought being older meant being unaware. You thought being kind meant being weak. He opened his mouth slightly, but no words came out. You used my daughter as leverage. You used divorce as a threat. And you mistook silence for fear. The hallway felt still. I wasn't silent because I was afraid of you, I said. I was silent because I was gathering proof. His jaw tightened. Not with anger this time, but with realization. You know what your real mistake was? I asked. He didn't answer. You assumed I loved my money more than my daughter. That one landed. Money can be rebuilt, I said evenly. But once trust is gone, it doesn't regenerate. He shifted uncomfortably. I never meant for it to go that far, he muttered. And that right there? That's how manipulators summarize years of damage. I never meant. Intent doesn't erase impact. You didn't think it would go this far, I corrected him gently. Because you didn't think I'd fight back. Silence again. Then I said the one thing I had waited years to say. You will never touch a single dollar connected to this family again. Not emotional. Not loud. Not threatening. Just absolute. And if you ever try? I added calmly. The system you tried to outsmart will be the first thing you meet. He looked at me for a long second. And in that moment, I saw it clearly. Not hatred. Not arrogance. Understanding. He picked up the box. Walked past us. And without another word, he left. That was the last time I ever saw him. The repayments continued until every single dollar was returned. Every single one. Emily rebuilt her life slowly. Therapy. Support. Distance. She started sleeping through the night again. Started laughing again. And here's the part one want every grandmother, every mother, every woman listening to understand. Keeping records is not petty. Setting boundaries is not cruel. Taking legal action is not dramatic. It is protection. For 3 years, I thought I was protecting my daughter by absorbing the damage quietly. I was wrong. Protection isn't silence. Protection is exposure. Jason believed age meant weakness. But what he forgot is this. Experience teaches pattern recognition. And once you recognize the pattern, you don't argue with it. You document it. You expose it. And you end it. If this story taught you anything, let it be this. Never let someone weaponize your love. And never underestimate a grandmother who has nothing left to lose, but everything to defend. This wasn't just revenge. It was restoration.